Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of This Week in Magic Online Finance. I'm your host, Chaz Andres, and as always, we're going to get started this week with the news. The big story today, of course, is that Ravnica Allegiance is finally here. It has been released on Magic Online. I know I'm excited. I hope you're excited. And, while we don't have a full week of pricing data or really any important tournament results, we actually do know enough already to start drawing conclusions about the new set. First off, it's pretty clear to me that Rakdos has come out of the gates as the deck to beat. Those aggressive red-black decks are looking really good in early returns, and both Judith the Scourge Diva and Light Up the Stage have really emerged as the centerpieces of this deck. Both cards have gone up in price since they were first released on MTGO a couple of days ago, and I expect those gains to continue. The other card that I'm seeing a little bit of hype for Rakdos-wise is Theater of Horrors, and that card is another I like a lot. It's actually performed well in my own personal testing. My only caution there is I'm not sure it ends up in that most aggressive deck. It may need a mid-range or even some sort of Mardu build in order to really shine, but it's another card that I'm fairly high on early on. Now, over in Simic, Prime Speaker Vannifar is actually the most expensive card in Ravnica Allegiance by a fairly wide margin, and I expect that to remain true for the next couple of weeks at least. See, Prime Speaker Vannifar is really exciting, and while I am a little bit personally skeptical that it's actually going to be able to recreate all that old Birthing Pod magic, the fact that people really want to make this card work speaks volumes, and they're willing to shell out the money too. Prime Speaker Vannifar actually debuted at 16 tickets, and it's been slowly ticking up since then. So I think this card is going to remain expensive, at least until we can see how the metagame actually adjusts and whether or not this new Prime Speaker Vannifar pod deck is real or not. Now, over on the bad side of the ledger, it looks like Dovin Grand Arbiter and Angel of Grace are the two biggest early losers so far. They've each lost a couple of tickets since debuting, and something's going to have to change for that trend to reverse itself. For Dovin, that probably means some sort of aggressive Bant Tokens deck, and for Angel of Grace, that probably means a resurgence of Boros Angels. Now, granted, both of these things are possible, and I've actually started to see some of the other Boros Angel staples starting to tick up. But the early returns for both of these cards just hasn't been there so far. Let's move on now to Gaining Ground, where in Standard, the card that gained the most ground this week, non-Ravnica Allegiance edition of course, was yet again Nexus of Fate. The powerful Time Warp gained about 3 tickets this week, jumping from 9 up to 12, and of course that is a result of Bant Nexus's triumphant return in Standard. Wilderness Reclamation, as it turns out, is a very, very legit Magic card. Now, despite the soft overall market right now, there are actually a couple of things I really like about Nexus of Fate as a spec target. For one, it was a treasure chest exclusive on MTGO, which means that the supply is fairly low, especially compared to, the rares that are released in every set that we all draft. And 2, it is ineligible for set redemption, which means you're not going to wake up one morning and find that your card has crashed 40% in value for no real reason. Also, yeah, I know we're all playing Standard on Arena right now, but Bant Nexus is a combo deck, and Arena is not really set up to make playing a combo deck easy and fun, so I expect a lot of Bant Nexus players may default back to MTGO. Regardless, this card does have some room to grow. Now, over in Modern, the card that gained the most ground this week was Batterskull, which jumped about 2 tickets from 3 up to 5. And this gain was actually the result of a rumor that Stoneforge Mystic was unbanned on the MTGO beta and Krark-Clan Ironworks was banned, and of course this would instantly make Batterskull one of the more relevant cards in the Modern metagame. Now, that rumor was debunked. It was a very good Photoshop, but it was a Photoshop nonetheless. Regardless, Stoneforge Mystic is still the most likely card to come off the Modern banned list today, and of course if it does, that means that Batterskull will be going up in price. I'm not going to get too much further into this speculation because, well, the Modern banned list announcement actually is going to be published just about concurrently with this video, so you probably know more than me there. Needless to say, if Stoneforge Mystic is unbanned, both Stoneforge Mystic and Batterskull will be rising in price even further from here. And if not, they'll both be dropping in price yet again. Let's move on now to our biggest loser, where in Standard it was Ral Is It Viceroy, dropping about 2 tickets from 10 down to 8. And for once in our wacky post-crash world, this is actually just a deck-building metagame decision and not something else. Refreshing, right? See, Ral Is It Viceroy was seeing some play in Modern Is It Drakes, and well, now it doesn't see nearly as much play in that deck. It was also seeing some play in Jeskai Control and Standard, but Standard seems to be moving in other directions, so less people need RAL. I expect the price to settle in around 5, which is where it was before this latest hype cycle. Let's shuffle on over to Modern, where the biggest loser over there this week was Liliana the Last Hope, who dropped about 5 tickets from 28 down to 23. And this is a result of the Modern market being soft, like it has been for the past 2 months. I really think that's about it. See, the most expensive Modern staple right now is Surgical Extraction at 45 tickets, and below that you've got Arclight Phoenix at 35, and below that there's not a single card on MTG Goldfish's Modern staples list that's even hitting the 30 ticket mark. So yeah, that's a soft Modern market. It's too early for me to say whether it's ever going to recover. I expect it will, at least to some degree, but right now the market confidence is just not there yet. Now, the sneak of the week this week is a little more like a spike of the week. I'm talking, of course, about Wheel of Fate. Wheel of Fate was down to about 1/10 of a ticket back in late December, early January, but once Electro Dominance was previewed, it began to spike. It jumped to about half a ticket, and then it settled down, but now it's on its way back up again. It broke that 1 ticket mark, it's on its way to 2 tickets, and honestly, I don't know if Electro Dominance is going to be all that good in Modern, but I expect Wheel of Fate will get at least past the 2 ticket mark, probably at least past the 3 ticket mark before we find out for sure. So I suggest buying a couple of these just in case. It's a very powerful card. It's spiked in the past, it'll spike in the future, so even if this one doesn't work out, you're not going to regret that buy. As always, we're going to end the week by taking a look at the MTGO Trader sales data over the past 7 days. And this gives us a great idea of which cards are actually selling the best, regardless of price increases or decreases. Now, looking at overall sales by volume, the most glaring thing to me is that the Ravnica Allegiance cards just aren't here yet. We just don't have enough data yet for them to start showing up. Check back in next week for them. For now, we still got things like Lightning Bolt and Overgrown Tomb at the top of this list. One interesting card I would like to talk about, though, is Assassin's Trophy. Now, Assassin's Trophy was definitely the most hyped card in Guilds of Ravnica. It started out at 1.5 million tickets roughly, and it started to crater and crater and crater, and it bottomed out around 2.75 tickets. I think that's about where it's at right now, but it's once again in the top 5 sellers overall. And this makes sense. We've got 5 more Shocklands to play with, which leads to the rise of 3-color decks, which means more room for flexible removal like this. So Assassin's Trophy may have been a disappointment, but its time to shine may finally be here. Now, in terms of overall sales by price, well, it's pretty much the same list of cards we've seen here week after week after week. Arclight Phoenix did overtake Surgical Extraction for that #1 spot, but the Extraction is still firmly in #2. After that, you've got a Liliana, Mox Opal, and another Liliana. And honestly, these Modern cards are actually still selling fairly well despite the soft market. So let's check back in next week and see if the banned and restricted announcement helped kick things into higher gear. Alright, that's all I got for you this week. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Chaz Andres, and I will see you again next Monday morning for another episode of This Week in Magic Online Finance.